Our sponsor, the 375 Human Performance Team, already has a website to deliver their Rangers exercise and nutrition information. However, the current website is not mobile friendly, preventing Rangers from accessing this application on the go. Thus, the primary objective of this project is to deliver a mobile-friendly application of the current website to allow Rangers to access this information from anywhere. In addition, the current website does not support any sort of in-app messaging. Thus, coaches and Rangers are forced to communicate via personal phones. This is why another primary objective of our project is to provide real-time messaging support in the mobile application. Lastly, in order to ensure that each Ranger is effectively training and practicing proper nutrition habits, coaches need to have access to reporting. Therefore, another primary objective of ours is to deliver reporting inside our application in the form of displayed metrics and graphical interfaces. Here we can see a summarized list of the tasks that have been completed thus far, broken down by module. First, we have our login module, which has been completed. The tasks related to this module included building out the login inputs, such as email and password, as well as building out the authentication for logging in a user. Our application also features a registration feature to sign up as either a coach or Ranger, as well as a forgot my password feature, which will allow a user to reset their password. Next, we have our homepage module. This is also completed. Our homepage module is different for our Ranger and coach. For a Ranger, splash page buttons were built out that link a Ranger to different articles. For a coach, a list of Rangers and a corresponding Ranger profile can be seen, showing a coach important metrics related to their Rangers. For both a coach and a Ranger, a pop-up is displayed on the home screen to enter in metrics about themselves. Lastly, a drawer navigator is available on the home page to quickly access any additional articles. Our programs module has also been finalized. This module features a calculator for a user to enter in their current metrics regarding how much they can squat, bench, etc. The user can then select the level they wish to start. Once the level is selected, the user is presented with each program related to that level in a week view. The user can then click into each week, for example, week 1, to access the day view for each week, which is where all of the exercise information can be viewed and tracked. Our messaging module allows a user to see their current chat rooms, create new chat rooms, and send and receive both standard text messages as well as picture messages. Lastly, our account module is where a user can find graphical representations of certain metrics tracked throughout the software. This is also where a user can access their profile page to update their user information such as name, email, password, or their photo. Our remaining challenges can be comprised into 3 groups: inputting data, testing, and production launch. Our goal is to input as much data as we can from our sponsor's current website. However, this will be very time intensive. In addition, once our application is finished, we must then begin the testing phase to ensure everything works and displays properly. Lastly, we will need to publish our application to the Google and Apple Play stores so it's publicly accessible. Here is a block diagram showing an overview of how our system works. Starting with the login system, if you are a Ranger, you are redirected to the app interface for a Ranger, and if you're a coach, you're redirected to the app interface for a coach. These interfaces communicate data to the AWS web server, which then communicates that data to Dynamo database and vice versa, meaning that, for example, once that data is communicated with Dynamo database, it then communicates back with the AWS web server and then communicates back with the app interface to go ahead and display any updates or changes made by the user.
Alright, hello, this is Tanis, and I'll be going over our database schema. And the reason why I have a question mark next to it is because for DynamoDB, it is a NoSQL database, and it's basically, or it is schemaless. So that's why here I just have my tables and their attributes listed, and there's no lines connecting anything as you would see for something like SQL if you were to make a database schema. And rather than like referencing tables through foreign keys and stuff to find the data you want when you query, instead for DynamoDB, there's basically blocks of data stored in JSON documents which you just retrieve, and each table must have its own primary key. And for here you see that basically every table, the primary key is just the ID of it, which is which uniquely identifies each entry for all these tables you see listed here. However, though, you can still have relationships like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many in DynamoDB, and you can see that for the chat room. So like a chat room will have multiple chat room users. In our case, we have it just two, like the two people chatting back and forth. A chat room will have multiple messages, so it's one chat room to many messages, and so on. Alright, so to start, for our user table, this is just our basic table for users that use our app. And you see here we store things such as name, email, and stuff like that, and the ID, of course. We also have an option for an image URI if a user wants to have a profile picture. So this is a pretty basic standard table right here. And then the next three tables to the right of that is used for our in-house messaging app. So we have a chat room, which, it stores the people that are chatting together as long as the messages that they send back and forth. There's the chat room user, which is basically just the user as defined in the first table I went over. And so each chat room user has a unique ID along with it also stores the ID of the user. And each chat room user belongs to one chat room, so that is why the chat room user has a different ID than the actual user itself for the primary key. So we know which chat room the chat room user is in, because for example I can be in multiple chat rooms, so that is why each chat room user will need its own unique ID. And then we have messages, pretty standard. Each message has an ID, it belongs to a chat room, and we know which user sent the message. Alright, and now we move on to Ranger metrics. So when you open the app, as you may have saw, you get a little pop-up and you can enter your weight and different, metrics for like how much you slept, what your willingness to train and so on is, how your appetite has been and soreness. And every time you open the app, you could choose to enter these or you could skip them. And this is stored on the back end every time a user saves. You also do not have to, on that pop-up, you could only, so for example, you could only choose to enter a weight, how much you slept and your appetite. You don't have to enter all the fields there, and it's stored in the back end and it's displayed on the account page, so you can so each ranger can keep track of how they've been doing for their last 7 entries. And the calculator results, that's for when a ranger enters like how much they bench, squat, etc. And based off these calculator results, different programs are shown to them. And then also with this, we take these values that the user enters, and then it'll calculate like how much weight each ranger should be lifting for each workout, etc., etc. And then going off that, we have our workouts table. So for each program, for your certain days and certain weeks, there's different workouts with different names that the rangers do. And we store that on the back end, so it's easier to list, and so people could change workouts easily. They just need to go in and change a couple values there, and then we store it on the back end to display. And then we have weeks completed, our weeks completed table, so a ranger can complete workouts multiple times, we allow them to do that. So if they want to say they, for example, this isn't an actual one, but like they did dumbbells like 3 times today, they can go ahead and check it off. I did dumbbells 3 times today, so that's an option. And we have, so weeks completed there. So for weeks completed, it's basically whenever a ranger completes a week, they just go ahead and say they completed it, and when they do, we store what program and what program they completed. And lastly, we have training logs. So at the end of each day, a ranger They can like enter a little comment in a comment box at the bottom. It's optional, they don't have to. And so basically for that program on that specific week on this specific day, then go ahead and type a little description of what they did, how they're feeling, so on, and that is stored on the back end. And this is mainly for the coaches to see, to keep track of their rangers. And so for the ranger metrics, calculator results, workouts, weeks completed, and training logs, the coaches are able to see this on their end for each specific user. So that's why all these tables are important for us. It makes it very easy for us to retrieve the data, makes it very easy for us to display it on the coach's end, and it's just nice and easy, displayed nicely for the coach to see, and they're able to keep track of their rangers. They can see the comments they made in the training logs, they can see what workouts they did, how many weeks they completed. They can see their metrics for the last 7 entries, see how they've been feeling, their soreness, their appetite, etc. So that's basically our database schema, if you want to call it that.
Hi, my name is Hendrein, and over the next few slides, I'll be discussing some use cases. So the first use case that we're going to look at is the login. So when a coach or a ranger logs in, they enter their username and password, their information gets authenticated in the database, and then if they entered in the incorrect information, they'll get a message saying this. However, if it is correct, they'll get access granted to the application. Next is if a coach or a ranger wants to create a new account, they either click Ranger Sign Up or Strength Coach Sign Up. They enter their name, email, and password. Their information gets updated in the database, and then they get access granted as well. The next use case that we'll be taking a look at is navigating to the splash page. So whenever a user wants to navigate to any of the splash pages, they log in, of course. Next, for rangers, they would input their daily metrics that are on the pop-up. Then they would be taken to the home screen, and on the home screen are the different icons for the splash pages. They would choose whichever one they want, and then they would be able to view the splash page. The next use case that we'll be taking a look at is to choose a program. So if a user wants to choose a program, they log in, they input the daily metrics if they're a ranger, they select either the Programs tab or the Programs button icon on the home page. Either option will bring them to the Program Finder page where they can enter their clean, bench, squat, and also select their program type. After doing that, they're brought to the screen where they can choose their week, they can select the day, and then they'll be able to view all their workouts. Next, we'll be looking at the use case to complete a workout. The user logs in, they input their metrics, they navigate to the Program Finder page, they navigate to the week and day that they're looking for. Then they can either watch the exercise videos or read articles for exercises. They can select the check for each workout as they complete it, and then they can also enter the training log in for that day, and they can save it. And also, if it is the last day of the week, they can mark that week as completed. The next use case we'll be looking at is to chat. So if a user wants to chat, of course they log in, they enter their daily metrics, and they're brought to the home screen. From here they can select the messaging icon, which will bring them to the messaging list. From here they can either use the search bar to search for an existing chat, which will allow them to select it and be brought to the chat room, or they can select the new message icon, which allows them to choose a new contact to message. And either way, it'll bring them to the chat screen, which will allow them to type messages, choose pictures, or take pictures to send to whichever other user they want to.
Hello, my name is Camila Curto, and I'll be presenting a use case scenario for when a user wants to enter their daily metrics. Either a ranger or a coach can go on their application. They will see their login screen. In that case, they will either log in or they will register as a user. After the login process is completed, they will have a pop-up that will allow them to input their daily metrics. Those are then sent to a database and stored. In this section, the rangers or coaches will view their metrics. In this use case scenario, the actor is going to log in or register as a user. After they are authenticated, they will have a pop-up appear on their screen, which will be a view allowing them to input their daily metrics. After they have input their daily metrics, that window is closed and they are automatically redirected to the home page. On the home page, they can look to the bottom of the screen where they will have a bottom navigator and an account tab. Once they click on their account tab, their metrics will be automatically displayed. In this use case scenario, the actor, which is either a ranger or a coach, is going to log in or register as a user. They're going to be authenticated and they will receive a pop-up. They will input their daily metrics and will be redirected to the home screen. From the home screen, they can navigate to their account, and from their account, they will be able to navigate to account settings, which is determined by a little gear icon on the upper right of the screen. Once they have arrived to their account settings, there are a few different options for them. What they can do is they can update their name, email, or profile picture. And once they click Save Changes, which is to be found on that exact same page, all their changes will be sent to the database and updated. From the same account settings page, they can also sign out. They can also click on an option which is called Forgot Password. Once they click on Forgot Password, they are redirected to another page where they will be able to reset their password. The following use case scenarios are going to be exclusively dedicated to coaches. For coaches, their process is a little different, and you can see it displayed below. You have an actor, which is obviously the coach. They will either log in or be registered as users. They will have a pop-up, the same as the rangers, where they can include their daily metrics. The only thing that will change for them is that when they are redirected to their home screen displays a list of all of the rangers that are currently enrolled on our application. In this use case scenario, again, the actor will be exclusively a coach. They will be logging in. They will have a pop-up appear where they can input their metrics. After that, they are redirected to their home screen where a list of all the rangers that are enrolled in our application is going to appear. And when they select a ranger of their choice, they will be redirected to the profile of the ranger they desire to see. And all of the metrics that the ranger has been inputted and that we have been tracking are going to be displayed there.
The first pseudocode we'll take a look at is the pseudocode for the login screen. This is the first screen you get to if you've never been on the app before. So we have the sign-in screen, and we initialize the sign-in button listener and the forgot password button listener. And we have some additional functions for when the sign-in button is pressed. If the username and password is empty, of course, we tell the user to fill in those required fields. If they're not empty, we send those usernames and passwords to the authentication part of the app. And if authentication will tell us if it's good or bad, and if it's bad, we catch that exception, and we tell the user that it's an invalid login and to try again. Otherwise, we also have the functions for the buttons for forgot password or send authentication code if they need to retrieve a password or authenticate a new account. And then we have finally our return function, which renders the UI. We start with the render root view with the basic base styling, and then the logo for the ARES mobile website, the banner, and then our view inside of the root view, which renders the section where you enter your username and password and click the login button, which you can see with the render custom input username, render custom input password button, forgot password button, and you can finally do a choose user if you have multiple users on the app, which will navigate to the choose user splash page. This pseudocode is a representation of the home page when you're logged in as a coach. We start with the screen initialization, initialize the user, the search bar state, and the contact list. A little context: when the coach logs in, their homepage is a list of the rangers that they are training. And like the messaging screen, you can scroll through, or the coach can scroll through and see what rangers they're training and click on one and expand that view to see more data about that ranger. So we initialize that contact list, and then we use the use effect if the user model equals user. We load that user's contacts in data store. This essentially just makes sure that we're loading the correct data for the correct user. The next use effect, the contact list equals to user.contacts. Once again, we make sure that the contacts is linked to the data store, and then we take the contacts from the data store and update that to the contact list for the screen. And then we build the screen page with a return render page view for the root container, the header title text that displays that just says rangers, and the render flat list, which will be your list of rangers. The data will be that filtered contacts list, and then it'll render items, each item being in that flat list a ranger item chat room, which like the messaging screen that comes later, each item is one of those rangers that you can click through and expand upon. Here we take a look at the pseudocode for the home page. If you're logged in as a ranger, we initialize the home ranger screen. And at the start, we initialize the safe area view, the scroll view, the survey pop-up that you get each time you log in or go to the home screen as a ranger, which you fill in. That's where you fill in your sleepiness for the day, your appetite for the day, and that's all stored in the back end. We initialize the logo and the drawer navigation. And basically, the homepage for the ranger is just a landing site with a bunch of clickable icons to take you to the different subpages and programs of the app. And you can see that in our render view, where we just link all different buttons to the subpages using the navigation. So the philosophy button is linked to an on-press navigation to navigate the philosophy subpage. The philosophy subpage is a component of itself and contains basically the exact information from the original website that we are pulling data from. And the rest is true for the subpages that follow. Next, we have the pseudocode for the account page. At the start, we get the user, and if the user passes authentication, we set all the attributes for the user, those being what workouts they've already completed, what weights they have, their program information, workouts they're doing. We see if the user selected a new calculator and refresh those fields. And if the user is starting a new training week, we initialize the new results field, basically starting a new result list, and we store the previous results in the database. And for each workout in this program, we link the displayed workout to the data store, because each person could be working on different stuffs or is at different parts of the training program. Next, we see the picker data synchronization function that passes the name, option, and value. This is attached to each picker. Each workout, or most workout rows, have a selection for what workout they want to do, and depending on the selection, you have different values, and that will be used to load in the correct values for each picker. And the render number of times function helps display the number of times each workout is completed on that screen. Then the return function that renders in the UI, we have our typical view container, and inside of there, for as many workouts as needed, this depends for program, but essentially you have just workout rows container, and each side in one of those, inside of the flat list, you will have the header, the description, the selector icons to pick which workout you want, the icons to see video information, and completion indicator. And that's essentially it for the programs page. Here we have the messaging pseudocode for the messages screen, which is the main component for the messenger. The messaging screen essentially has a list of chat room items, each one being a specific message with a person. At the top, we initialize the chat rooms using the useState chat rooms to get the user's data, which you can see in the next use effect with a fetch chat rooms asynchronous function, which queries the data store with the user to fetch their specific chat rooms and authenticates that the user is valid. And then the next use effect takes a filter key, which is linked to the search bar on this screen, and the new chat rooms becomes the queried search using the filter key. And then the return function, which renders all the view UI components. We start with the typical render page view for the root container, and then we render that search bar first, and then we render a create new message button so you can start new chat rooms with people. And then we have a flat list that each index in the flat list is a chat room, data equals chat rooms, and we render each one of those. Here we have the pseudocode for the account page. At the start, we initialize the navigation, the weights from the useState weights, which contains the weight information and user ID and the log information of the current useState, which is basically the current user. So we initialize all those with the user's stored data. And then we have our first use effect, which is an asynchronized fetch metrics that will fetch. Well, first it'll authenticate the user, make sure that the user is part of the system. It'll set the user to the stored user data, set the ID to the stored user data ID. It'll set the dates and the new workouts and all the other attributes. And then onto the next middle section, still part of the account page. This is all part of the account page. We update the workouts with the data store by querying it and accessing the stored logs, the programs that were completed, and the for loops show how we are only pulling the last 7 entries of any given log or metric. So sleepiness, soreness, willingness, we go through the last 7 days and we also check which of the 3 attributes, usually it's low, average, or high, or poor, medium, great, none, mild, moderate. And we conditionally render those and display it in a graph view, which takes us on to the last pane on the right, which is our sleep data, and data sets all get loaded in, and finally the return, which is the front stuff, the front end interface UI that's rendered. We have the root view that renders in, the pressable navigation icons, and then we load in all the last 7 workouts, weights, sleep, willingness, appetite, and soreness views, and create graphs with those. And then at the very end, we render a nested scroll view and render the last 7 logs, the scroll view being there. That way we can fully scroll through all the logs because they could be, up to a paragraph.
Our Gantt chart is split into 2 plans, Q1 which correlates with last semester and Q2 which correlates with this semester. Here we can see the Gantt chart for the documents phase which was completed last semester. Next, we have part 1 of the implementation phase, the login page. Next, we have part 2 of the implementation phase, which includes all other modules that needed to be implemented, including our metrics pop-up, homepage, messages module, programs module, account page, settings page, drawer navigation, and content. Currently, the only modules that are not fully completed include the coach homepage, drawer navigation, and content. We are still working on configuring the backend to display data from the database for each ranger profile shown on the coach homepage. For the drawer navigation, we still need to build out the subpage links, and with regard to content, we are still working on building out the articles related to each subpage that appear in the drawer navigation, as well as inputting exercise content. Lastly, we have our testing phase and product release. Our testing phase will be started this week, the week of March 21st, and will last until April 11th. The goal is to test every module and make any modifications prior to the product release. Once our application passes quality assurance, the application will be reviewed with our sponsor and submitted to the Google and Apple Play stores. Now we'll see a demonstration of our application. First, we'll log in as a ranger. You'll also notice that our application offers features to reset your password from the login page, as well as to create a new account. Next, the ranger is presented with the metrics pop-up where they can enter in information regarding their weight, sleep, and more. Next, the ranger is shown what we call splash icons that link to articles provided by the sponsor. The homepage also features a drawer navigator that will allow users to navigate to additional articles. Next, we'll move over to the program screen. Here, a user can enter in their clean, bench, and squat, as well as select the level they wish to start. Next, they'll be shown a week view of all programs available for that level, and they can click on a specific week to get started. Here, the user can navigate between each day and see the exercises related to that day. A user can also mark an exercise as complete more than once, and their completions are tracked. You'll also notice that some of the exercise information conditionally changes based on the selected exercise. In addition, the values after the slash are calculated values based off the calculator on the main program screen. So for example, if we change our clean to 200 and revisit the same exercise, we'll notice that the values after the slash have increased. Each day view also features a log for a user to notate any additional information regarding their training. And lastly, on the last day of each week, the user is able to mark the week as completed. If it's the first time the week has been marked as completed, the bubble icon for that week will display in a blue color. Thus, any weeks with a gray background have not been completed yet. Next, we'll review the messages module. On the main screen, you can see your current list of chat rooms. You can also click into any current chat room and continue your conversation. A user has the ability to send standard text or photos. You also have the ability to create new chat rooms with any user in the system. Next, we have our account page. This is where a user can see all of their track metrics as well as some graphical displays. Items shown here include things such as number of workouts completed over the last 7 days, sleep tracker, training willingness, and more. A user can also navigate to their account settings page by clicking on the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner. Here, a user can modify their name, email, password, or profile picture. A user can also log out of the application, which is what we'll do now. Next, we'll go ahead and log in as a coach. The interface for a coach is the same as it is for a ranger, with the exception of the home screen. So here we can see that a coach is presented with a list of rangers, and they can drill down on each ranger to see specific stats related to that ranger.